Hello YouTube and welcome back to Simple Essentials. Today we're going to talk about decluttering, which is a key part of living a simple, clean, clear life that gives you a lot of time for other things rather than stressing about the small things that don't matter. And clutter is definitely one of those things that can stress people out. And decluttering your home has a lot of health benefits for your mental health, your peace of mind, your sense of accomplishment, but also financial things like we find things more easily. We know what we have. We don't buy duplicates. So decluttering your space is actually a really great place to start, and remembering that you can start really small. In my next video, I've got a 7-step declutter challenge for you. And if you're really ambitious, you can do it over 7 days. But if you want to spread it out, of course, you can do it over 7 weekends or whatever time interval that works for you. And it's a really great way for you to start decluttering and doing so in a sustainable way that is not going to overwhelm you. Chances are you clicked on this video though because you're interested in getting started with your decluttering right now. And that is fantastic. I would love for you to watch this video first though, because it's going to help your thinking and probably even save you a little bit of money in the process as well. So I love watching people declutter things. I've watched countless YouTube videos of those beautiful, the messy before shots to beautiful after shots. And some of my favorite channels here on YouTube will talk about the process that they go through and how they kind of do that in a sustainable way by recycling things, donating things and selling things. But quite a lot of people don't. And I thought it was an important thing to raise because my philosophy is that I am just as responsible for anything that comes into my house, whether it's a free sample, a product that I purchased, a gift that someone gave me. All those things I'm responsible for when they come into my home. So I'm just as responsible for how those things exit my home. And even if it can be so tempting when we're decluttering and just throwing everything in the garbage or in the bin and it goes out of our house and it's out of our view, but in reality, there are so many things that go in the bin that should never have gone there in the first place. And some of the things that you might just be throwing out or giving away could actually make you some money. So I'm going to share a few quick tips with you today to look at and keep in mind before you even start your decluttering. And there are not very many of them, but let's go. So the very first thing is to have a dedicated space in your house where you're going to put the things you declutter. So things like expired products or anything like that, that's obvious trash, can obviously go in the bin because it's not something someone else would want or can use or safely use. But anything else, whether it's clothes, kitchen items, furniture pieces, whatever it might be, it's a great idea to have a designated space where all that stuff can go. So you might have a garage or a storage unit, you might have a corner of a spare room that you don't use very much, that for a few weeks or a few days while you do this, that can be your kind of dumping spot. And it also means that you'll see a much bigger difference in the areas that you do declutter because the things come out of them. Secondly, and a big reason why we have that designated area in the first place is to think repurpose. I don't know how many times I have gone through different areas in my house and found myself with extra plastic tubs or crates or organizational things or bags or lamps or pictures that used to hang on the wall in one room. And when I take them out of the first room, it's hard to see them being repurposed. You might just go, oh, I don't really like this item anymore. But for example, recently I moved a lamp from one room, a little table lamp that suited much better in another room. Same goes for plants and a bunch of different things like that. So by having that extra designated space and taking the item out of the room that you no longer want it in means that you can sometimes repurpose more than you think. Repurposing can also be things like having a black picture frame and you go, oh, I don't like black picture frames anymore. Well, could you spray paint it gold or something else and hang it back on that wall or in a different room? So it's really, really cool sometimes to do those very simple do-it-yourself projects. I'm not very creative like that, but it is really, really cool that you can do those things yourself and fairly easily as well. The next thing that's really key, and it's actually something a lot of people try to do but give up on, so stick with it, and it's to sell the things that you can sell. So obviously you would have already thought, can I repurpose this and put it anywhere else in my house? And chances are you've gone, nah, I'm done with this item. And even if it feels like a small, cheap item to you, like a tiny little, I don't know, chest of drawers or a lamp or a couple of picture frames or a couple of indoor plants, whatever it might be, even clothing, you can sell most things. I have had great success over the years selling electronics, clothing, kitchenware, furniture pieces through things like Gumtree here in Australia, which I think in America you call Craigslist. We also have obviously Facebook Marketplace, so any country that has access to Facebook would have access to Facebook Marketplace. And I have sold numerous things, and some of it not for very much, but it feels really good to pass it on. For example, we recently upgraded our camping tent from a smaller to a bigger tent, and the smaller tent we had was really perfect functioning order and everything, and we didn't want to donate it or throw it away because it was great. So I put it up on Facebook Marketplace, and I had a guy come and pick it up. I think he paid $20 or $25 for it, so I got a little bit of money back. He picked it up the same day, super easy. It was out of my house, and he was going camping the same weekend. So to sell things is actually a really good thing to do. I will also say, and I'm not affiliated with any of these sites, but if you do have a particular item that could be a little bit harder to sell in your local community, for example, my partner had a very kind of custom leather jacket that we didn't think would be very easy to sell locally. He tried to and didn't get a lot of bites, but we actually ended up selling that through eBay, even if they charge a small fee. He actually found a buyer overseas, and we just said, look, we're happy to ship the jacket to you if you just pay for the postage, with that, which that person did. So sometimes it's good to think about what specifically are you trying to sell and how much do you want for it. And if you simply don't need the money back for the item and you just want it out of your house, that's why we have the next one. For the next step, it's all about giving things to people that you know, such as friends, family, colleagues, or something like that. And the thing to remember here is that don't just go moving your clutter from your house to someone else's house without them actually saying, yep, I would love that, or yes, please bring it over. It's a really key thing to ask people first if they need the thing that you're planning on giving them. So for example, if you have children and they have outgrown clothes or toys or books or anything like that, it might be a great thing to ask a friend or a family member and say, oh, I know that your kid is about this age. Would you like me to bring over the things that I have and you can sort through them, or are there any particular pieces that you need? Same goes for any books or kitchenware or pieces of furniture, basically anything that you're looking to get rid of. Make sure that you ask the other person first if they genuinely want it, because otherwise all you're doing is creating clutter for someone else. If you have people in your life who have hoarding tendencies, i.e. that they tend to hold on to an awful amount of stuff, I would generally recommend don't bring things over unless it's a thing that you know that they need. So for example, if you have a spare microwave and that person's microwave just broke, then by all means feel free to offer them to replace it with your functioning one that you no longer need. But just make sure that you're not giving things to people where it's going to cause more clutter somewhere else. Obviously, it's not your responsibility what someone else chooses to do, but make sure that you are giving things to friends and family in a respectful way and not just, dumping things. I've had great experiences with some good friends of mine who've gone through their wardrobes and said, oh, I no longer need these clothes. And it's great, when you get a beautiful quality piece that suits you and that you can continue wearing. Same goes for makeup products or facial products or anything like that that's not expired, a perfume or something like that that person just didn't want to keep and it really suits you. So don't be afraid to ask, but make sure that you ask first. So after we've gone through the previous steps, it's really good to then donate responsibly what we have left. So remember though with donations, whether it is furniture, clothes, anything else, that only donate things that are of good quality and still useful or usable. I volunteered the other year through my then workplace for a charity shelter, and one of the jobs I had during the day with one of the other girls was to go through the clothing donations, and we had pretty strict criteria on what we were allowed to keep and what had to go in basically the discard bin, which if it's lucky it goes to an underdeveloped country or potentially something like that, and worst case it just goes straight into landfill, which is obviously awful. But what I noticed when we were sorting through the clothes is like there were things that were obviously stained, heavily bleached, torn up seams and things like that, or underwear. So obviously think about making sure that you don't donate anything that is not of good quality or not something that you would ever give to a friend or a family member. Because if it's not good enough quality for you to give to someone you know, then chances are it might not be good enough quality for you to donate it. If you send it to a donation centre, they will actually have to, similar to what my experience was, they need to stand there with volunteer people going through and filtering through. And in my experience with the one I did, we ended up, half of it was basically not good enough to go through to the Repurpose and the charity shop. So it's really sad to see all that stuff go to waste. And I think people always donate with the best of intentions, but just remember to look at the items critically and go, is this pan, pot, picture frame, jacket, whatever you're donating, is it of good enough quality that it should be donated? So we've, repurposed stuff, we've sold stuff, we've given to friends and family, we've given to charity, and now you're probably left with a pile, or you've started a pile that looks mostly like garbage. Now, there is a lot of things that should never go in the bin, and depending on the country where you live, recycling might look a little bit different. But Google recycling and your local council or your local town, just put it in Google and you'll find out where you can get rid of things that might not be super obvious, like old mattresses, old paint, electronics, things like that. There's a bunch of things who should never ever go into landfill, batteries, things like that. So just Google how recycling works in your local area. Here in Melbourne, where I live, we have what's called commingled recycling, where you can put cardboard boxes, metal, hard plastic, and a bunch of other things, glass. And then there are recycling centres where you can take paint, batteries, electronics and things like that, and for a small fee or for free you can leave these responsibly at a donation centre. In the blog post that I'll link below this video as well, there are some tips of where you can recycle old clothing, because there are some different ways that clothing that is not good enough for a charity shop to use, you can actually donate it to other causes and it will be recycled in some way rather than ending up in landfill. Chances are when you're going through, you'll find a lot of cardboard, plastic and potentially paper clutter in your drawers and boxes and things like that. So make sure you recycle that if you can. And as much as we like to minimize our footprint, there will inevitably be a few things that has to go in the trash or in the garbage. And what I can recommend, if you live in a house that only has one bin for trash, you might want to spread your declutter out over a few weeks just to make sure you're not filling up the entire bin in one go. So that's just, again, why it's good to have that designated area as well if you end up with a couple of different trash bags that needs to go out in the bin. But there are a few things that need to go in the trash. Don't feel bad about it. Sometimes I know people, when they declutter, they look at things and they go, oh, what a waste. I had 3 packets of this type of flour that has expired, etc. Just be really aware that when you declutter and keep up a good system, you're actually wasting a lot less in the future that's going in the trash. So acknowledge your past self for operating under the best intentions that you could at the time. Throw the things away that need to go now, and promise yourself that you're going to do just a little bit better going forward, and circulating your food items, your beauty products, whatever it is. All the best. Have a great time decluttering. It's not as bad as it seems. And in the next video, we'll talk about the 7-step declutter that I use that I find really, really helpful to tackle and go through your home. Look forward to seeing you in the next video.